I lived my life in two worlds. The great outdoors was my home, but indoors, I was a teacher and a father. There was plenty of adventure in that, too. I always thought if I didn't die of old age, it'd be one of my big adventures that take me. I never thought I'd end up murdered, not in my wildest dreams. As a high school teacher, I loved teaching my students about the great outdoors. I wanted them to learn about the rhythms of the planet, the warmth of the sunlight, and the big Southern California sky overhead.
Steve was more comfortable on the side of a mountain than he was in the city. He taught me to climb, he taught me to ski better, he taught me to surf. It was such a big part of his existence.
But the best thing that ever happened to me was when my daughter Shaitan was born.
His relationship with his daughter was wonderful.
We were always outside, and he'd rig up like big swings for us, and my mom was always freaking out.
I got a job as a teacher. My outdoor adventures found a new home in the classroom.
He's always been good at teaching. He's always good at helping someone. I think that he really made an impact on a lot of people's lives. One of the things that he said that he liked the most about teaching was just the one-on-one with the kids.
He was the kind of dad that my friends were all jealous of, because he really knew how to relate to us on that like playful level that their parents couldn't really do.
I never had trouble connecting with kids, or the kid in me. But the hard truths of adulthood were a lot rougher to swallow.
I think he saw a side of humanity that really bothered him. You know, it was really hard for him to understand why you just wouldn't do the right thing.
On June 1st, 1993, I tried to do the right thing. But there are people out there that don't play by the same rules.
I was down in San Diego at the time visiting with friends. He called me earlier and talked with me and with Shaitan.
It was a busy time at school, so I stuck around and let my girls do their thing at the beach.
Steve had gone to the school to receive an award for his teaching, and he also was going to stay there and finish up grades until late.
My parents tried to check in on me the next day, just to make sure I wasn't lonely without my girls. But all they found was an empty house. I had never made it home the night before.
His parents had just arrived at the house. His father called me to see if Steve had come down there. I said, well, no. And he said, well, he didn't show up at home, and he wouldn't have not shown up. I knew when I hung up the phone that he was gone.
My wife's intuition was dead on. If there's one thing I learned as a teacher, it's that most people jump to the first conclusion that pops into their head.
There's no crime for an adult to go missing, which is one of the obstacles that we have when we're investigating those types of cases. Especially in Steve Wood's situation, there was no indication of foul play because of Steve's hobbies. He liked to surf, he liked to camp. Steve may have taken advantage of the springtime weather and went surfing or camping and failed to inform somebody.
But my family knew I would never leave them like that. And after a while, police started figuring that out too.
The last persons to have seen Stephen prior to being reported missing were several of his faculty members from the school. Faculty members that we spoke with told us that Stephen was in good spirits, his usual jovial, joking self, and they noted no unusual occurrences with him.
We checked his bank records, any records at all that would lead us in the direction of his whereabouts. Those leads proved to be fruitless, and it appeared that Steve had just vanished.
But no one disappears without leaving something behind. I was no exception.
The following day, a patrol deputy driving routine patrol in Yucaipa located Stephen's truck.
There was no indication of any type of an accident or even that the vehicle had become disabled or broke down. When I looked in that vehicle, what I saw was very bizarre, and I had never seen anything like it.
Looks like someone left a message behind in that truck. But it wasn't me. We often forget the power of nature, and while it can be destructive, it has its reasons. Unfortunately, the same can't always be said of mankind.
The truck was discovered in a rural-type area.
But it was what they found inside my truck that horrified everyone.
There was a dog taped to the steering wheel and with a cigarette in the dog's mouth. In all my years working, I've never seen anything like that. I've done 125 jury trials, murder trials, and I've never seen anything like that.
Was the dog hit on the road, and did somebody, including Mr. Wood, tape the dog to the steering wheel? Was there a message that was trying to be sent to whoever found it or the police? And if that was the case, what was that message?
You can't blame people's imaginations running wild after seeing that poor dog.
Back in the 90s, there was some satanic type of culture and activity in some of our county rural areas, but it was done at places like cemeteries.
There was never any evidence or proof that these types of acts had occurred. You have to focus on what is factual.
It took police a while to turn away from that dead dog, but once they did, they noticed something important. Certain things I always kept in the truck were gone.
We discovered that a large quantity of Steve's personal property, surfing equipment, camping equipment, had been stored in the truck, and those items were missing. There was certainly something wrong, and Steve was certainly in trouble.
I knew that he wasn't there, that he had never been there. He was a climber, and there was just a way that he tied ropes and put things, and everything was done for a reason. And nothing, the way the truck was left, was like the way he would have left it.
People were beginning to realize something horrible had happened to me. And while I know how my story ends, it was just starting to unravel for everyone else.
The actual search after locating the vehicle lasted several hours. We'll use mounted horses in an effort to locate any leads or direction of travel. Nothing was found. There was really no evidence located that would help us in determining what happened to Steve. In an effort to locate him, we began doing interviews with anyone that was associated with Steve. The places that Steve liked to frequent, Yosemite National Forest, being an avid surfer, he visited the beach area a lot. Flyers were made and sent out nationwide, but they produced no leads.
And while these were some of my favorite places in the world, there was nowhere I would have rather been than home with my daughter.
I know that Shaitan had a hard time with that because she didn't want to think her father would leave, but then she didn't want to think that she'd never get to see him again.
It was hard. I mean, everybody wants to have their dad. I missed him.
I think when any person goes missing, you hope that you're going to be able to find them alive. Sheriff's Department, they didn't give up. They started taking different leads, hundreds of leads that led to nowhere.
Everybody was getting really frustrated, but if you're patient, things change.
We received a call at the station of found human remains. The remains were found by a quail hunter.
It looked like investigators had finally gotten a break. Just not the one they were hoping for. I always knew Yucaipa, California as a peaceful place. It's as though the surrounding mountains kept an eye on all of us.
Yucaipa is one of our nice, quiet bedroom communities. The crime rate in that city, in our county, is probably one of the lowest. Very community-based. It's a good place to raise a family.
But is anywhere ever really safe?
Approximately 5 months after Steve Wood disappeared, the Riverside County Sheriff's Department received a call of a found body in the San Mateo Canyon.
Evidence has a way of speaking for itself. You just have to know how to listen.
We located a piece of paper underneath the upper torso, and it said Yucaipa, Calimesa Unified School District Hall Pass. My first impression was this was Stephen Wood.
They took the dental records and made the match that it was indeed Stephen Wood.
More than anything, I wanted to tell my family everything would be all right. But they knew nothing would ever be the same.
Delivering news that someone's loved one is no longer going to be coming home is probably one of the toughest things any individual has to do.
I kind of lost it and, fell down and started weeping, couldn't stop.
My family could finally lay me to rest. They held my memorial under the blue skies of the great outdoors.
A lot of his friends were able to come from all over, and we had an altar that I got to decorate. I put a lot of his climbing gear and the things that were important to him, and it was a beautiful time. But it was really hard. It had been 5 months, and even though I knew it was this finalization, there was the question of what happened.
At least my family knew where I'd been all this time. But investigators still needed to figure out how I got there and why.
It is now absolutely a murder investigation. It changed the whole idea and concept that perhaps he's still missing, perhaps he's still alive, to this is now murder.
We also examined the clothing and there was a couple tears that were very clean, which indicated that they probably were not made by animals, that there might have been a sharp instrument such as a knife that was involved. The fact that 4 months had gone by before Stephen's remains had been found makes the case go cold pretty quick. We have to figure out where we're going to start.
It wasn't what anybody expected, but there was somebody who was about to give police a place to start. As a teacher, I learned that at the end of the day, kids just want to be heard, especially when they feel like they have something important to say.
The investigation grew cold for about 4 months when a patrol deputy on routine patrol located a female runaway. She said that she was in fear to go back to her mom's house. She told the deputy, "Do you know about the Yucaipa school teacher?"
It was a strange thing coming from a young girl's mouth, but secrets can weigh heavily on us, and there comes a time when you just have to lighten the load.
As we spoke to the runaway juvenile, she identified her half-brother, Thomas Keith, her mother, Charlotte Woody, Curtis Elsie, and Michael Davis as being involved in this case.
The girl said everybody in the group had played a part in my murder, but who did what was still a mystery.
What told us she was telling the truth was her statements were corroborated with the missing items. She saw property, she saw camping gear, and nobody knew that except for the detectives and the investigators. The homicide team then all went up to Northern California to make contact with all of these individuals. They found the evidence that connected them at the home.
Turns out, that poor girl was the only good thing living in that house.
This was on her conscience, it was weighing on her. Even though her mother and brother were involved, she felt it was the right thing to do for this family. She gave us the biggest break we had. In fact, but for her, I'm not sure we'd ever solve this murder.
I was always willing to lend a helping hand, but some people are simply beyond reach.
This group of individuals had left the Northern California area and had committed a series of violent crimes during their travel to Southern California. The suspects had walked by the school, saw Mr. Wood in his classroom. He was alone. They made contact with him, and they had asked him for a ride.
Stephen, being the kind-hearted person he was, agreed to do it.
Unfortunately, these guys wanted more than just a ride home.
Thomas Keith said things went bad. He started talking about Curtis Elsie, Michael Davis, holding a gun, pulling him out of the truck when they stopped, and demanding the truck, demanding his wallet, at which time Stephen Wood then began to run.
Curtis Elsie and Michael Davis took off running after Stephen. And the gun goes off, and Stephen's shot.
And as he was laying there begging for his life, he stuck the knife through his body.
Charlotte Woody orchestrated how to get rid of the evidence. She thought it was amusing to put that dog in the truck. She thought it would be a stumbling block for the detectives, and in fact, it probably was.
I never could understand why people couldn't just do right by one another. But doing things so wrong is totally beyond my comprehension.
Because he went out of his way to help. Stephen lost his life
These young men may have taken my life, but I live on in other ways. My girls make sure of that.
I think of him every day. I think about him a lot when I'm in nature, anything that is fun, really.
Anywhere I would go, people knew him. It was almost like he had lived so many more years than he was really at the age of. So he definitely lived a very full life.
Life's a powerful force. Look at our planet. It has a way of persisting, coming in and out, like the tides of the ocean. I might be gone, but I'm still a part of this world. I lived my life in two worlds. The great outdoors was my home, but indoors, I was a teacher and a father. There was plenty of adventure in that, too. I always thought if I didn't die of old age, it'd be one of my big adventures that take me. I never thought I'd end up murdered, not in my wildest dreams. As a high school teacher, I loved teaching my students about the great outdoors. I wanted them to learn about the rhythms of the planet, the warmth of the sunlight, and the big Southern California sky overhead.
Steve was more comfortable on the side of a mountain than he was in the city. He taught me to climb, he taught me to ski better, he taught me to surf. It was such a big part of his existence.
But the best thing that ever happened to me was when my daughter Shaitan was born.
His relationship with his daughter was wonderful.
We were always outside and he'd rig up like big swings for us, and my mom was always freaking out.
I got a job as a teacher. My outdoor adventures found a new home in the classroom.
He's always been good at teaching. He's always good at helping someone. I think that he really made an impact on a lot of people's lives. One of the things that he said that he liked the most about teaching was just the one-on-one with the kids.
He was the kind of dad that my friends were all jealous of, because he really knew how to relate to us on that like playful level that their parents couldn't really do.
I never had trouble connecting with kids, or the kid in me. But the hard truths of adulthood were a lot rougher to swallow.
I think he saw a side of humanity that really bothered him. You know, it was really hard for him to understand why you just wouldn't do the right thing.
On June 1st, 1993, I tried to do the right thing. But there are people out there that don't play by the same rules.
I was down in San Diego at the time visiting with friends. He'd called me earlier and talked with me and with Shaitan.
It was a busy time at school, so I stuck around and let my girls do their thing at the beach.
Steve had gone to the school to receive an award for his teaching, and he also was going to stay there.